So I want to tell you about the day Marcus learned the difference between reacting and responding. He was the director of operations for a manufacturing company that made custom parts for the automotive industry. Marcus had built a reputation for being level-headed under pressure, the guy you could count on when things got complicated. But one Thursday morning, everything went sideways at once. Their biggest client was expecting a shipment of 50,000 custom brake components by Friday afternoon. So it was a make or break delivery. Miss it, and the client would impose penalty fees that could cost them nearly $200,000 and plus potentially lose the contract altogether. So Marcus walked into the plant and discovered that a machine malfunction the night before had ruined about 40% of the order. Now, to make matters worse, his production manager had tried to fix the problem overnight without telling anyone. And now they were 8 hours behind schedule with no clear path to recovery. That's when Marcus lost it. Now, not screaming and throwing things, but his frustration came out in cutting sarcasm and barely controlled anger. He made pointed comments about taking initiative without thinking. He questioned people's competence in front of their peers and created an atmosphere where everyone was walking on eggshells instead of focusing on solutions. The irony, his reaction made everything worse. People started covering their backs instead of collaborating. Information stopped flowing freely because no one wanted to be the next target of his frustration. So by noon, it was clear they weren't going to make the deadline. But here's what changed Marcus's behavior in an instant. His plant supervisor, a guy named Jim, who'd worked there for like 15 years, he pulled him aside and said, "Marcus, I get that you're stressed. We all are. But right now, we don't need you to be angry. We need you to help us think through this mess." And that hit Marcus hard because Jim was right. His team didn't need his emotional reaction to the crisis. They needed his leadership to navigate through it. So Marcus took a 5-minute walk outside. He came back and he completely shifted his approach. He gathered everyone together and said, "Okay, we're in a tough spot, but we're smart people. We've solved hard problems before. Let's figure out what's possible." Well, the transformation was immediate. People started sharing ideas. They offered to work overtime. They suggested creative solutions. They didn't make the original Friday deadline, but they worked out a compromise with the client that saved the relationship and most of the revenue. More importantly, Marcus learned something that changed how he led from that day forward. His team's performance was directly connected to his emotional temperature. Proverbs 29:11 says, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." Now, this isn't just about managing anger. It's about emotional discipline under pressure. And notice the contrast. Fools give full vent. They let it all out without filter. But wise leaders bring calm in the end. The word "end" is key here. It doesn't mean wise people never feel frustrated or stressed. It means they don't let those emotions drive their leadership decisions. They process the emotion internally and then respond with the clarity their team needs. So Marcus learned that reacting is emotional and instant. It's about releasing your frustration. But responding is intentional and strategic. It's about creating the environment your team needs to perform. So what do you do with Marcus's story and this proverb? Well, I'd say first build in a pause. When you feel that surge of frustration or anger, commit to taking at least 30 seconds before you speak. Ask yourself, what does my team need from me right now? The answer is rarely your raw emotions. And then second, I'd say separate the problem from your feelings about the problem. So Marcus's frustration was understandable, but it didn't help solve the manufacturing crisis. So focus your team's energy on solutions, not on processing your emotional reaction. And third, I'd say become the emotional thermostat, not the thermometer. Right? Thermometers reflect the temperature around them, but thermostats set the temperature. In crisis moments, your team will mirror your emotional state. So make sure it's one that helps them perform. Pressure is just part of leadership. There's no avoiding it. But how you handle that pressure determines whether your team rises to meet challenges or gets paralyzed by them. Now, if this episode challenged you, share it with another leader who's learning to lead through the heat. And remember, foolish leaders give full vent to their emotions. But wise leaders bring calm when it's needed most. I'll see you next time.